If you open up Google Earth and head to Central Solomon Islands, you'll find yourself here, looking at a dark blue patch of water in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's about the same size as dots of land that make up the nearby islands.
Whenever you think about the most ostentatious displays of wealth, owning an island or living on one definitely ranks atop that list. I mean, think about it. Most of the celebrities you know and adore all have islands. George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio, Shakira, Eddie Murphy. The list goes on pretty long. That said, not all islands are what you think. Sure, you've got the ones where everything is beautiful, and life is just a bed of roses that encapsulates eating mangoes and stuff like that. But there are also islands that are pretty brutal. On these islands, life is much less desirable than you would imagine. And if you're ever trapped there, let's just say that you would need almost a miracle to help you out. In this video, we'll be looking at one of the most isolated islands in the world, the Pitcairn Islands. One island, 4 islands. When you think about being stranded on a deserted island, I'm pretty sure some stereotypes come to mind. If you saw the earlier episodes of the hit CW TV series Arrow, then you probably know what I mean. Still, the Pitcairn Islands stand quite unique when it comes to deserted, uninhabitable islands. Relatively unknown to many, the Pitcairn Islands are a group of 4 volcanic islands located in the southern Pacific Ocean. Located about 5,000 kilometers from New Zealand and about 5,400 kilometers off of South America, we have a landscape that many describe as the most remote, isolated island mass on the face of the planet. The Pitcairn Islands make up a considerable part of the British Overseas Territory in the Pacific and have a very unique cultural standing, as we'll get to see later on. To date, the British authorities maintain their control of the Pitcairn Islands. But, considering just how seemingly uninhabitable the islands are, I doubt anyone would be looking out for them too much. In total, there are 4 individual islands that make up this group, and they all have pretty cool names. There's Henderson, Ducie, Owino, and Pitcairn itself, all of which are in very close proximity to each other. The 4 islands are scattered across a few hundred miles of ocean and control a combined land area of about 18 square miles. That said, Henderson is the largest of the 4 by a considerable mile, with experts noting that it accounts for about 86% of the total land area in question. Still, Pitcairn is the only one among the 4 islands that is said to be inhabited. There are several islands close to the 4 that are inhabited, but for some reason, Pitcairn remains the only one among them with a human population. Speaking of the human population, Pitcairn Islanders are said to be a biracial ethnic group with an ancestry dating back to bounty mutineers and a few consorts from Tahiti. The mutiny in question has been covered extensively, and we'll touch on that later. But, according to the most recent estimates, there were said to be less than 50 people living in the Pitcairn Islands. So it's not like the place is especially crowded or anything. A most fascinating history. Now, you might be asking yourself, how did the Pitcairn Islands even come to be? Well, the story is actually pretty interesting. The Pitcairn Islands have been through quite a lot. According to historians, the earliest known settlers of these islands were actually Polynesians, who had lived on both Henderson and Pitcairn for several centuries. The Polynesian race is especially prominent around this area, so it's not exactly out of line to believe these guys resided on the islands at some point. Now, while most archaeologists believe that Polynesians had been living on Pitcairn since the 15th century, something interesting happened in 1606. In January of that year, Pedro Fernandes de Queiroz, a Portuguese sailor who was sailing for the Spanish crown, came upon the Henderson and Ducie Islands. Historians claim that de Queiroz named the 2 islands La Encarnación and San Juan Bautista, both of which translate to the Incarnation and Saint John the Baptist, respectively. Now, we should point out that some historians have also expressed doubt about the specific islands that de Queiroz actually visited. Some believe that he and his crew actually landed on Henderson and Pitcairn, although the general consensus is that he touched down on Henderson and Ducie instead. Anyways, official records show that the founding date of Pitcairn itself was July 3, 1767. HMS Swallow, a British sloop led by Captain Philip Carteret, was passing by when the crew members sighted the strange island and landed there. Eventually, the island was named after Robert Pitcairn, a 15-year-old midshipman who was said to have been the first crew member to actually lay eyes on it. Now, following the discovery of Pitcairn, several people tried to actually get back there. But, as it turned out, Captain Carteret had apparently sailed without a marine chronometer. So, he charted the island wrongly, putting in false coordinates as he moved. So, when several other sailors, most notably Captain James Cook in 1773, tried to find Pitcairn, they actually couldn't. Boy, talk about a happy accident, am I right? Anyways, in 1789, perhaps the most notable event in the early history of the Pitcairn Islands happened. That year, the HMS Bounty, a British merchant ship that had been purchased by the Royal Navy for a botanical mission, was sent to the South Pacific Ocean under the command of William Bligh to get breadfruit plants and ship them back to the British West Indies. The crew of the Bounty stayed about 5 months in Tahiti, mostly waiting for the breadfruit plants to grow. In that time, several of them had grown intimate with the local women. Add this to the fact that they had been exposed to life on Tahiti, which was pretty chill, and you can imagine that several of these crew members wouldn't necessarily be enthusiastic about hopping back on the ship and spending months on the treacherous seas once again. Add this to the fact that the crew's captain was said to also have become somewhat of a tyrant. Bligh was said to have begun handing out increasingly harsher punishments to his crew members, criticizing them for their mistakes, and generally being something of a jerk. So it wasn't exactly out of line to believe that the crew members would have grown tired of his entire mess and just chosen to live on the island paradise for the rest of their lives. Anyways, after the 5 months in Tahiti, the Bounty finally set sail with its cargo. However, about 2,000 kilometers west of Tahiti, a mutiny broke out on the ship. Led by Acting Lieutenant Fletcher Christian, the mutiny on the Bounty, as it is now known, was a bloodless mutiny that was executed to perfection. Of the 42 men on board the Bounty, 22 joined the mutiny, while 2 remained passive and 18 maintained loyalty to Bligh. With their numerical advantage, the mutineers were able to gain control of the ship, and they ordered Bligh, along with 2 midshipmen, the surgeon's mate, and the ship's clerk, into the Bounty's boat. Several other men joined Bligh's party, and together they managed to sail the open boat about 56 kilometers to Tofua, an island in Tonga. As for the mutineers, they knew that there would be no way for them to head back home. They were now seen as traitors to the crown, and they knew that the government wouldn't take their mutiny lightly. So they decided it would be best if they pretty much just vanished. After months of traveling, the mutineers eventually managed to settle on Pitcairn, but not before they set fire to the Bounty. Fortunately for them, the Polynesians they had taken with them had expert navigational skills. So, they managed to lead them to the first patch of dry land they knew. Pitcairn was the perfect hiding spot for Christian and his band of mutineers. They discovered that it had been mapped wrong on their map, and if this was true, then its location was probably wrongly input on every other map in existence. So, they decided to set base here and pretty much live the rest of their lives. The mutineers were said to have survived on Pitcairn by fishing and farming, although their initial settlement period was also marked by considerable tension, as several issues, ranging from illness to murder, took the lives of most of them. Still, though, they managed to pull through. Some of the mutineers found religion, and they were able to help forge a peaceful society on Pitcairn. Then, the Ducie Island was rediscovered around 1791, when Royal Navy Captain Edward Edwards and his ship, the HMS Pandora, came upon it while searching for the Bounty's mutineers. Edwards eventually named the island after Francis Reynolds Morton, a third Baron Ducie, who was also a captain in the Royal Navy. Anyways, as for Pitcairn itself, its inhabitants claimed that they didn't see any ship wash up on its shores again until December 1795. The ship in question didn't get too close to the island, so they couldn't say for sure which country it was from. Another ship came around in 1801, but it also didn't make any contact with the islanders. Then, in February 1808, an American sealing ship named Topaz became the first to visit the island. Led by Mayhew Folger, the ship's crew spent about 10 hours on Pitcairn, and from then on, the island saw a steady stream of whalers, including the famous James Arnold in 1888. Henderson Island was eventually rediscovered in January 1819 by James Henderson, a British captain who worked for the British East India Company and led a ship named Hercules. That same year, Captain Henry King landed on the island, only to find the British flag already flying. Finally, the last island, Oeno, was discovered in January 1842 by an American captain named George Worth. The captain, who was aboard the ship named Oeno, decided to name the island after his vessel. By the middle of the 18th century, the Pitcairn Islanders had pretty much accepted that their land was a British colony. The British themselves accepted the islands in 1838, and that same year, Pitcairn Islands actually became the first British territory to allow women to vote. It could have been because there weren't so many people on the island to begin with, or maybe they were actually as progressive as they looked. Still, whatever it was, women got the right to vote, and it was definitely a great first step toward gender equality. This period also marked an era of sporadic population growth. In fact, as of the mid-1850s, reports showed that the community on Pitcairn was outgrowing the island. Scared about the implications of this, the island's leaders decided to petition the British government for assistance. And the Brits responded by offering them settlement on Norfolk Island. In May 1856, the entire population of Pitcairn, which amounted to almost 200 people, left the island aboard the Mauritius and set sail for Norfolk. They arrived about a month later, although interestingly, about 17 of them returned to Pitcairn less than 2 years later. In the following 5 years, a further 27 islanders returned to their homeland. They say that there's no place like home. And when it came to the early Pitcairn Islands, it appears that this quote especially held true. In April 1881, when the HMS Thetis visited the islands, sailors reported seeing people very happy and in perfect health. At this time, the island's entire population had grown to about 96, and there appeared to have been a thriving community there. The crew of HMS Thetis delivered even more goods to them, and in 1882, an American trading ship known as the Venus delivered a supply of cottonseed to help the islanders grow crops for consumption and trade. Interestingly, the British government extended its reach in this territory in the early 1900s, annexing the remaining 3 islands by 1902 and laying claim to them and their land. It's unclear whether there were any locals on Henderson, Ducie, and Oeno, but that didn't matter. By the late 1930s, the British government had incorporated all 4 islands into a single administrative unit, and thus, the Pitcairn Group of Islands, basically the early structure for the Pitcairn Islands that we know today, was finally born. Everyday life in Pitcairn. The very location of the Pitcairn Islands is quite fascinating. Because the islands are so isolated, even getting there is a bit of a chore. You'd need to fly out to Tahiti and then take a boat ride that can easily last anywhere between 1 to 4 days to get there. As if to tell you that your destination won't be fun, even the boat ride will be pretty rocky. I mean, you'd literally be sailing across the South Pacific Ocean. That's definitely no easy shakes. Still, getting there is possible, albeit very challenging. And for most people who have actually been to Pitcairn, the reviews are pretty much the same. The island is incredibly beautiful, but it's also very lonely. Because the Pitcairn Islands are so isolated, getting most of the social amenities available in the Western world can be a bit challenging. I mean, even stuff like shopping malls are barely there, just skeletal structures where people can buy stuff. Instead, the islands mostly rely on palliatives and supplies sent from the British government or others around who lend a helping hand. Yeah, good luck getting stuff delivered here from Amazon or having 40A come to your aid if your car develops a fault. In terms of control, oversight of the Pitcairn Islands mostly comes from the British government. This is administered through the Office of the Governor of the Pitcairn Islands, which itself is based in New Zealand. Due to the island's rough terrain, its inhabitants don't have so many sources of food. They rely mostly on subsistence farming, growing crops, and using them for food. Fishing is also another activity that is pretty popular here, not just for feeding, but also as a source of trade and income generation. And while tourism is pretty booming on the Pitcairn Islands, just like many other islands like it, the fact that there aren't so many people here, as well as its distance, means that its tourism industry probably isn't measuring up to its full potential. I mean, why spend thousands of dollars and almost 2 weeks to travel to a remote island in the South Pacific when you could just go to Hawaii for half the price and time? Most of the people who come here are intrepid travelers who are curious about its history and natural beauty. But there are only so many of those people in the world, and far fewer who actually have the resources to travel. As for their culture, well, it's kind of a mixed bag. While Pitcairn remains a British colony, its culture is a fusion of both British and Polynesian cultures. The inhabitants of this island have managed to maintain their identity, and even though much of their activities and their economy are reliant on the British, they do their best to maintain their identity through and through. Life in the Pitcairn Islands can be quite interesting. With their location, the islands definitely look like a paradise. But for someone who's already used to the trappings of Western life, it can definitely take some adjusting to. What do you think, though? Would you love to have a getaway here? Let us know in the comments.